Morning, everyone. Welcome to our February 15th, 9:30 a.m. meeting. It's our last committee meeting before our lateral. So we will get all of our bills out today in time for the deadline. We're in room 312 here at the Capitol. We'll welcome all our testifiers today. We do have a 2-minute time limit. We're a little bit flexible, but we're going to try and get through all of our measures in a timely manner. So we're going to upkeep decorum and make sure that things aren't repeated too many times. So with that, we're going to start with HB 1363 relating to taxation. This extends the period with which a county may adopt a surcharge on the state tax under certain conditions from 3/31/2019 to 12/31/2023. First up, we have Evan Oy from NAOP.
Evan Oy on behalf of NAOP, we stand our written comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Tom Yamachika, Tax Foundation of Hawaii. On Zoom. All right.
He just popped in.
All right. We'll give him a few seconds. We also have Gary Suganuma, Department of Taxation. Oh.
Recording in progress.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kathy Nee. I'm representing the Department of Taxation. Department stands on its written testimony with comments. I'm available for any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Mayor Richard Bisson in support. No one's on there for that, I think. HHFDC.
Good morning, Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair IU, members of the committee, Denise Iseri Matsubara, HHFTC. This measure presents itself an opportunity for the counties to really invest in infrastructure and partner with the state. I think it's a great policy shift and hopefully will lead to lower prices for our home buyers. So I really appreciate this bill. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Lisa Paulson, Maui Hotel and Lodging Association in support. Let's go back to Tom Yamachika. Is he back on?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We have some constitutional concerns, and we are worried about whether this measure violates the General Laws Clause. When this body issues directives to counties or other lower units of government, they have to be uniform across the board. Because the legislature is already mandating that the city and county of Honolulu use all of its county surcharge for rail, I believe it was decided that the other counties may be mandated to do things related to transportation, such as bus systems and so forth. By going into housing infrastructure, we think that there's a deviation from that, so we would advise this body to get some legal opinion on whether that's kosher or not. Other than that, we will stand our testimony, be available for questions.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? 1363. All right, members, any questions?
Sure.
Repo Nishi.
I have a question in regards to the added opportunity for housing infrastructure. I guess DOTAX.
Yes, Representative.
Since there's nobody else here and you guys collect and distribute the taxes, so in here on page 9 as part of the bill, it says the housing infrastructure provided that the county that uses surcharge revenues for housing and infrastructure shall not pass on related infrastructure costs to the developer of a housing project. My question to you is, do you know who currently monitors or has oversight over the use of these surcharge funds? Is that Department of Taxation?
As far as I know, it's not us, but I can get confirmation and get back to you on that answer. I don't have the exact answer to your question with me now.
So you guys aren't monitoring whether all of the proceeds for the city and county is being used to cover rail expenses?
Unfortunately, I cannot answer that question with the exact answer. I can get back to you on that.
Right, and likewise, you don't know if the counties that have approved it are using it for transportation-related expenses, correct?
That I'm not aware of. Like I
Okay.
said, I can get back to you on that answer.
Okay. The other question I had is, this obviously creates a situation for the counties that would allow them an additional use. Would the counties be able to use their general fund money that is being put towards transportation to use for this infrastructure development instead of for transportation, since they already have a surcharge?
That answer I'm not aware of. I can get back to you on that. I would have to
Yeah,
take
I
that back
know,
to the
there's nobody
department.
from the counties here to testify, so.
So I'm
Sorry
I just
for-
don't want
I-
to give you the wrong answer,
Yeah.
but I just want to make sure that I have the correct answer. But
Yeah.
I can have the department will contact you offline.
Okay,
with that
I
one.
just wanted to make sure the questions are out there. in the
Definitely.
public hearing.
Thank you for your
Okay,
question.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Chair.
Rep. Onishi. Members, any other questions? Maybe Do Taxi can come back up. So I guess, I'm not sure if you've had conversations with the director, but can you tell us, I think in your testimony it said that you can begin collections on January 1st, 2025 if they do the surcharge by December 31st, 2023. Is there an earlier timeline that DOTAX is able to accommodate if they do pass the surcharge earlier?
Potentially, but right now, due to the number of tax bills that we have, that's the reason why we're putting this in our testimony, is because we just want to ensure that we have the system in place in order to provide all of these tax rate changes, collection differences.
Okay, thank you.
But we're definitely open to discussion.
Okay, members, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to HB 360 relating to housing. This increases the deadline for a county council to take action on an affordable housing project's application from 45 days to 90 days after receipt of the proposed project's preliminary plan specifications. First up, we have Kevin Carney from HC Hawaii. In opposition, HHFDC.
Morning again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Denise Matsubara, HHFDC. We have serious concerns with this measure, with any measure that delays housing this way, especially in the rising interest rate environment and the rising cost of construction. This is really not going to help affordable housing, so thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Tim Streitz in support. Ruth Love in support. Any others wishing to testify? HB 360. Members, any questions on this measure? All right, seeing none, let's move on to HB 224 relating to human services. This establishes the Hawaii Public Housing Authority Public Housing Tenant Upward Mobility Pilot Program. First up, we have HPHA.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The Housing Authority stands in strong support of this measure. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We have Ruth Love in support. Anyone else wishing to testify? HB 224. Members, any questions? Right by you.
Yeah, Hakeem, I have a few questions. So the previous committee report indicated 500,000 for the project. Is that consistent with your number to administer the project?
Correct. We estimating to start with that, open a wait list, and see how many more participants are interested in this program. Then come next legislative session with a report and any adjustment that may be needed.
Okay. How many people do you think you can serve with 500,000, and what's the cost to administer the program out of the 500,000?
we guesstimate in somewhere around $700 to $900 per participant.
That's how much they'll need.
Correct.
They'll need 5.
That's our estimation, the cost to a nonprofit or other entity that will administer this program. Excuse me.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair.
Rep. Onishi.
Yeah, for public housing. So, do you have any figures in terms of the potentially eligible tenants that this program would serve? Not just the pilot program, but if the pilot program is expanded to a permanent program?
Thank you, Representative. I don't have those numbers, so we're hoping to start with a pilot to determine what the exact number is.
Well, I meant eligibility to participate, not how many are going to participate, but, I mean, right? I mean, you know how many tenants you have, how many are seniors, how many are, I mean, so there, I mean, if this is an admin proposal, right?
I'm sorry?
The
No.
program, the pilot program is an admin proposal?
I don't believe so. I don't believe it's an admin.
It's not? So
Is it?
this isn't a program that?
I'm sorry, it is an admin. I apologize. It's an
Okay,
admin.
so it's being an admin program, it was fleshed out a little bit
Sure.
as to why you're doing this?
We teamed up with UH to do a social study, UHCDC, to do a social study for public housing, interviewing multiple public housing tenants. We found out that the multi-generational poverty is increasing for those who may not be able to go to college and others. So this program, we're trying to figure out some kind of training program to break the multi-generational poverty that we see in our public housing. Currently, we serve about 45,000 tenants statewide. At minimum, we feel that about 10% of that would be qualified for this program, but we don't know how many will actually take advantage of this program.
Do you have numbers by counties?
I can provide you with that.
Okay. So if you've been working with UH, why isn't this program or this pilot program working with the university system for them to provide these skill training and enhancements for them to be qualified for, other types of work or other types of skilled labor?
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. Excellent question. We teamed up with the USCDC to do the actual study, an independent study with our tenants without our presence, just so we can understand what the issues are. We feel that this pilot program might not necessarily be catered to those who want to attend college or others, but those who want to learn a trade, those who want to learn some kind of a profession other than going the route of doing a 2 or 4 year college. We feel that this may be better suited for a nonprofit or others that do these kind of upward mobility programs to be able to train the folks that live in our public house.
So do we have these types of entities in Hawaii?
We have done a self-sufficiency program, and we had some nonprofits that were helpful. And I'm talking about sometimes just starting teaching our tenants how to save money, how to balance your checkbook, how to look for a job, how to do your resume. There's a lot of things. What we want to offer as well, any positions that we have available, to hire these folks to do those training on site so they are able to gain the expertise, and from there they can go to any company or any agency or anything that they'd like to do. But yes, through the self-sufficiency program that we had, there were nonprofits that were qualified to do this.
So you don't feel like working with the UH system, whether it's the community college or the 4-year colleges, that would benefit your tenants in terms of being able to develop programs at those institutions for your tenants that allows them that ability to get certification or, additional degrees or stuff into structured programs that employers will acknowledge as that individual having skills or education at a higher level.
No, I don't feel that way. I feel the opposite. I think it will be great. I think it will be a tremendous service to our community to have not just this program, but other programs with UH, with other colleges and others. I think it'll be tremendous. No doubt about it.
Have you guys attempted to do that?
We have attempted about 5 or 6 years ago to create a program with UH, and we had multiple meetings that did not go anywhere.
Okay, thank you. Thank
All
you,
right,
Chair.
members, any other questions? Thank you, Hakeem.
Thank you.
Just real quick, so you don't need any more positions, right? You're gonna contract this out as
Yeah, no more
Okay,
positions.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. HB 148. Relating to taxation, this establishes a surcharge on the conveyance tax upon the transfer or conveyance of prolonged vacant property. First up, we have Department of Taxation.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kathy Nee, Department of Taxation. Department stands on its written testimony with comments. I'm available for any questions.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Yamachika, Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We have some serious concerns about this bill. Number one, how is the tax authority going to establish the premise that residential property has been vacant for 180 days during the year? Not necessarily in order, but at some point during the year. In previous years, similar bills have come before this legislature, and DPP, for one, has testified that they had trouble enforcing, that they would have trouble enforcing something like this. I mean, what are they going to do? Put a little piece of paper in the door and see if it hasn't popped out in a day or two. And separate and independent from that, there may be some perfectly good reasons why somebody and their house are not together. Like, for example, somebody's in the hospital. I have put in our testimony a list of exemptions from the classification from a 2020 City and County of Honolulu bill that this committee may want to consider as exemptions for this particular classification, such as title to the property was transferred, or the owner is deceased and a determination of ownership is pending in the courts. Stuff like that. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. We have Ellen Carson, Church of the Crossroads, in support. Lindsay Garcia, Hawaii Realtors Association, in opposition. Ellen Godby Carson in support. Will Karen in support. John Chang in opposition. Grassroots Institute of Hawaii with comments. Ruth Love in opposition. Any members of the here wanting to testify in HB 148? Seeing none, members, any questions? Rep. Martin.
I'm not sure who could answer. We'll try with Department of Taxation since you're here. I understand the intent of this bill. It seems though it's casting a very wide net, and people might choose to sell their homes at times of change in their life. That might also cause real residents who have lived in that home to be, absent for periods of time before the sale. So I feel like this approach is very clumsy and will catch the wrong people. Do you have any ideas of a better approach that might catch true investment properties?
That's a very good question, Representative, and that's one of the things that we did put in our testimony about possible 3-year look back, just for verification purposes. That is one of the things that we highlighted with this particular bill, is the verification portion of the 180 days. Just from the department standpoint, we don't actually have a section that would go in to monitor residential, rental units in general to see how long they're being rented for. A lot of it is, like, taxation purposes is voluntary compliance, and so we do have a section that goes in and looks at, vacation rentals on Airbnb and so forth. But right now, I think definitely from our side, it's open for discussion. For the testimony purposes, the 3-year look back was one of the things that we were proposing, but the department is definitely open to discussion and opinions on how to best handle this bill.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on.
Thank you.
HB 1252, relating to energy. This provides rebates for eligible electric vehicle-ready parking stalls for new construction of affordable housing. First up, we have Leo Asuncion, Public Utilities Commission.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Grace Ralph. I'm with the Public Utilities Commission. We're standing on our written testimony, but can be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Glick, Chief Energy Officer, Hawaii State Energy Office.
Hi. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Chris Junker for the Hawaii State Energy Office. We stand on our written testimony in support and are available for questions.
Thank you. Department of Taxation.
Thank you, Chair. Kathy Nee again for the Department of Taxation. Department stands on its written testimony with comments. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Let's see. Blue Planet Foundation.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Jody Robinson with Blue Planet Foundation. We're in support of this bill. This bill is to provide an incentive for new affordable housing to be made EV charger ready. So not requiring the chargers themselves, but just the wiring and conduit necessary. And why this is important is retrofitting a building after it's already constructed to be EV ready is significantly more expensive. And as our market moves towards adopting more and more EVs and we phase out internal combustion engines, we see this as a really important piece to achieve equity and ensure that our low and moderate income residents are able to afford EVs in the future. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, we have Tom Yamachika, Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on a written testimony and be available for questions.
Thank you. We have Ulupono Initiative.
Good morning, Chair Hashimoto and Vice Chair Ayao. Members of the committee, Micah Munikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We stand in our testimony in support of this measure. There's been a lot of great policies passed by this body to really support EV adoption across the state. I think this is just looking to take it one step further. One of the major barriers, as we've heard over time, is around EV adoption, is around infrastructure and charging infrastructure. So I think this bill really tries to tackle that issue. Currently, about 80% of our EV drivers charge at home. 40% of Hawaii residents live in multifamily unit dwellings. So looking to kind of tackle that issue and some of those numbers that are there. Some of the studies that are out there looking at San Francisco around the cost of retrofitting of an EV stall, it's looking at about 9 times the cost when you do a retrofit. So really having that infrastructure in place on the front end when planning out any new kind of building or facility for dwellings, I think it's very responsible to consider in things like this measure. Thank you very much, Chair.
All right, thank you. Evan Oy, Nayap Hawaii.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Evan Oy on behalf of NIAP Hawaii. We stand on our written comments, and we do appreciate the intent of this measure to really incentivize, the installation of EV infrastructure. We really appreciate it as opposed to a mandate. The incentive is much more preferred. So, available for any questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Junchi, Hawaiian Electric, on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. June Chi with Hawaiian Electric. We stand on our written testimony in support and this supporting this measure as it provides rebates that will incentivize EV-ready infrastructure in affordable housing new builds. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Energy, Caroline Carl, Executive Director.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. Chester Carson for Caroline Carl and Hawaii Energy. You have our written testimony in support, and we stand on that and are available for any questions. Thank you.
All right, HHFDC.
Morning, Denise Matsubara, HHFDC. So I don't want to be the naysayer in the room, so I'm going to say I really support green energy and we want to be energy efficient, but to the point where it affects the criteria for allocating low-income housing tax credits. These projects, generally the population, EVs are not attainable for them. To the point where you now try to legislate the QAP, you know, we generally oppose that, and across the nation, HFAs have shown that legislating the QAP, which is what this does, just really isn't good policy because you can undermine the actual evaluation process. To the degree that EVs become much more affordable for the low-income renters to afford, we would need national standards, just as we have for LEED, for it to apply, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to get certified and to be evaluated on a fair basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's a number of other individuals who submitted testimony in writing. Anyone else wishing to give verbal testimony today? All right, seeing none. Members, any questions? Rep. Martin.
I have a question for Denise. Thank you. So this is just for new housing, and when you folks build that new housing, how long do you think it will last? How long is it intended to last for?
You know, it's hard to say. When they build it, the affordability terms usually run about 60 years or so.
Just because we are intending to go to 100% renewable energy by 2045, so if that housing is expected to last much longer than that date, then these people will be required to drive combustion engine vehicles, and they'll need somewhere to charge it.
Sure.
So it seems like adding in the infrastructure at the time of building, when it's much cheaper to do so and you don't have to break up concrete and stuff, is just good planning. That's all. I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
good point. Thank you. So what I would suggest is that somehow there's some work at the national level so that national standards could be developed and incorporated into building codes. Thank you.
All right. Members, any other questions? Rep. Onishi.
Chair. For Hawaii Housing Finance.
Back up, Denise.
Sorry. Were you able to read the committee report?
Yes, I did.
You did?
And it said it's not intended to be a mandate, I believe.
Yeah, but
But the way it's
on
written.
page 3, line 13, I'm not 13, paragraph starting on 13. In developing the qualifications, allotment plan, effective, blah, 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 the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation shall include amongst its criteria the evaluation and allocation tax credits, the project's inclusion of electric vehicle-ready parking stalls. How do you interpret that? Is that a mandate? Yeah, so this contradicts the committee report from the previous committee where it's saying it's not, this is intended to be optional for the developers. If they want to do it, they can get a rebate if they do it, right? They qualify for it.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I
Yes, thank
clarify
you.
that.
Thank you. I agree with you.
Yeah, thank you. Chair, if I might?
Yep, go ahead.
I'd like to call Ulupono. Micah, if you would. Micah, you testified in regards to 40% of EV owners charge at home.
80%.
80% charge at home?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So of that 80%, how many of them are at an income level below or at 140% of the area median income?
We don't have those numbers, Representative. Can
Can you take a
definitely follow
guess?
up. I can't honestly make that estimate.
Half?
For argument purposes, we can say that, sure. if that's what you
Well,
like.
I would
can
challenge you
follow
on
up
that.
on stuff around that, but yeah.
So, we're, again, and I think there were previous testimony that sort of alluded to the fact that people who meet this criteria for low income or affordable housing have a hard time being able to acquire EV vehicles. And I realize we have other bills that are trying to cure and address that issue. But this seems like a mandate for people who cannot use it. It's like a feel-good type of mandate. You have any opinion on that?
Well, thank you, Representative, for that question / comment. I think from our perspective, the market is moving in this direction. A lot of the manufacturers making commitments towards 2035 going all electric. I mean, we're seeing more of the models on our streets every single day. The affordability issue, as we look to sort of expand adoption across the state, you'll see a lot of measures that this body has passed in the past, and still considering to this day to really allow for folks to get an EV and acquire an EV. But what this bill really does, I think, Rep, is really address the infrastructure issue. A lot of these, folks that maybe are in this particular income range, maybe in some type of multi-family unit dwelling, or some sort of walk-up where EV infrastructure is not always available. So looking towards affordable housing and developments in the future, I think it would be smart on us to consider some of these measures to really put some of the infrastructure in place now, because we're moving in that direction. It's just trying to proof out some of our future planning and where we might be as a community. So that's our stance on this. I understand it's a little general, and we can follow up on some of those statistics that you're asking for, Rep. But we're going in this direction, and things are moving there. And I think some of the price parity and the market behind vehicles, I mean, they're already very close. They're already very close to what our gas-powered vehicles are in the market these days. And over time, there's going to be a secondary market that would also be available for folks as well. So we do see, the times are coming. A lot of commitments across, not only our state but the nation around electric vehicle adoption. So again, just trying to tackle the infrastructure side with measures such as this.
So from your standpoint, you trend across the nation and by manufacturers, but are there other renewable or other types of technologies that are currently being pushed or developed?
Yes.
Both internationally and at our federal government level?
There's definitely other technologies that are being developed. I think hydrogen has been talked about in the past, and I believe it was this body that passed infrastructure support last session to really help meet some of those fueling issues and fueling station issues that could be available to folks across the state. So, it's our estimate that about, where hydrogen is at is about 10 years ago where electric was at. So, the technology is going to continue to develop over time. There's no question about it. But, I think just looking at where we are with electric vehicles and seeing that price parity kind of happening at the marketplace, it's extremely close. So we just find like it's a good investment towards, our zero emission future.
So are you folks familiar with hydrogen vehicle development throughout the world, in other countries?
Us in particular, we're still trying to learn. We're still picking it up. I mean, it is something newer that we're looking into. I think that there's definitely folks that are excelling at just that technology. So, it's something that we as a state should be looking at. We should always be looking at the next, best thing, what's available, and really providing a lot of options for our communities when it comes to renewable energy and transportation.
Okay. And Chair, I have one final question
Go
for the
ahead.
PUC.
Go ahead, PUC.
Good morning.
On page 9 in the bill on paragraph I, it says, "Nothing in this section shall prevent an entity from simultaneously claiming a rebate under the electric vehicle charging infrastructure rebate program," which I believe you guys testified you have a program for
That's correct.
already, and electric vehicle ready parking stall for new construction of affordable housing. So would there be any duplication in terms of the effort?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. In my opinion, no, there would not be duplication. The EV Ready stall rebate provides a rebate for the actual electrical infrastructure needed to install a charger, whereas the rebate for the charging system actually then provides additional funding for the charger itself to go in the spot. So in our testimony, I think we provided that having both rebates available is really helpful because, one, you can have the EV Ready stall, and then when the charger is ready to go in, it makes that more readily available. So you're basically helping to ensure that these EV Ready stalls will have charging infrastructure placed there. And it helps further bring down the cost.
Okay, so a person would not qualify for the electric charging infrastructure rebate?
Not
Because
unt-
when you put in the charging station, it includes that part, right?
So I'm not sure I totally understand the distinction that you are making, but my understanding is that you would qualify for the electric vehicle EV Ready rebate when you put in the conduit and the wiring in the electric vehicle in the parking stall. And then when you place a charger on that, in that stall, then you would qualify for the rebate for the charging system. Is that clear?
Well, the charging system, if you put in the whole thing, isn't that the charging system?
Oh, sure, okay, so.
So you would qualify for that rebate,
Yes, correct.
right?
Yeah,
But if you had put in the infrastructure, you'd qualify for that rebate too.
correct. If you
So
have.
you would be able to
yes.
get it twice for the same work.
It's for different work. You have the opportunity to, when you're building an affordable housing unit or a new construction building, you can wire a stall so that it's ready to have a charger placed there, but you don't have to do those at the same time. So you could have the wiring and the conduit ready to go, and then years later you could place an actual charger there. So you could earn the EV Ready rebate at one time and then later earn the charging system rebate. And it is different work, and it costs, different amounts.
But you would not qualify for the charger to be installed for a rebate because the building's already built.
You would qualify for the charging system rebate at the time that a charger is placed in the stall,
Under this bill?
under the program that already exists.
Oh, under the program?
Yes,
Right?
yes,
But
yes.
as far as for this bill, you could get both.
Oh, I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding. Under this bill, you would only receive rebates for the EV Ready infrastructure. So that's the wiring and the conduit in the parking stall.
From you guys.
Yes.
But in this other program, you would get the rebate for installing the whole system.
It is separate. So the existing program provides a rebate for an electric vehicle charger.
Yeah.
So you would already have to have the conduit and the wiring ready to go in order to install the charger, at which point you could receive the rebate from the program that is already in place.
Right. So what it says in this bill is nothing in this section shall prevent an entity from simultaneously claiming a rebate under both programs. So you could get both
Yes, you could get
for the
both. if
same
you-
work.
Well, I would argue that it is different work because, you're just, EV charger or the EV ready stall requires, an electrical
That's your
upgrade.
program, right?
That's
That's your program.
the program.
But this program is the whole system.
No, it is separate. So the existing program is for EV chargers. That's already in place, and we're running that in conjunction with Hawaii Energy. This bill is amending that program to add an additional rebate for the electrical work needed to install the charger. So I think that provision that you're noting in this bill is allowing someone who's doing the work at both times, so installing both the EV Ready stall and the charger at the same time, to claim both rebates for the different portions of that work.
Well, I interpret this as they are eligible for an EV. This program is for an electric vehicle ready parking stall, which includes the whole thing.
Well,
To be
I think-
EV ready, it has to include the infrastructure and the charger.
So on page
No,
11.
it's not EV ready?
On page 11, the electric vehicle ready is defined as the full circuit installation, which is 208 volt, 3-phase or 240 volt, single phase power, the panel, the capacity, the wiring, and the overprotection devices. So it's basically the same thing as a dryer circuit. So you're basically installing sort of like the outlet and the electrical infrastructure, but not the actual charger. So you could definitely install this, the dryer circuit or the similar infrastructure to the dryer circuit without having then the actual charger that you would plug into your car.
Okay, so this definition is for this bill, correct?
Yes, correct.
What you would qualify for
Under
in
this,
order to get the rebate,
yes, correct.
okay? Your program includes the same thing.
So the program now initially does not include any rebate for the electrical infrastructure, that the dryer circuit, or the panel and the capacity and the wiring. The current program does not provide a rebate for that. It provides a rebate for the actual charger.
Your program?
Yes.
Okay, your program is the electric vehicle charging infrastructure rebate?
Yes, correct.
So
It's
an
being amended,
infrastructure
so
rebate.
right now the program is called the Electric Vehicle Charging System Rebate, EVCS. So it's for the charger program. On page 9, there's a definition of what currently qualifies. It's the alternating current level 2 charging station, commonly referred to as the level 2 charging station, and it's actually the electric vehicle charging system. And that also includes a rebate for the direct current fast charging system, the DCFC, that's defined on page 10. So as it stands right now, the program is the EVCS, the electric vehicle charging system rebate. This bill amends the program to add in the rebate for the electric vehicle, the EV ready infrastructure. So it's amending it to be from the charging system rebate program to also include other EV infrastructure rebates, which are the EV ready stalls, the wiring, and the paneling.
So this will become one program.
Yes, it's adding an additional portion to the existing program.
If that's the case, then why is this paragraph necessary, paragraph I, if it's gonna end up being one program?
I think it's mostly a clarifying paragraph. I think, in my opinion, you could read this without that paragraph and still qualify for both types of rebates. But I think this does help to clarify that you are eligible, in fact, for both rebates if you do both types of work.
Well, in order for the building to qualify, you gotta do both, right? You can't have one without the other.
You can actually have
To
one without the
qualify?
other.
To qualify for this program?
To qualify for a portion of it, yes. So as the measure is proposing,
Okay, well, thank you, Chair. I didn't read this bill that way. that it was
No,
modifying
I
an
think
existing
you make some
program.
good points. So members, any other questions?
Yeah.
We're up by you. Go ahead.
For the PUC first, and I don't know if you can answer this question, but when we talk about a stall being EV ready, if the developer puts it in between two stalls, what you're talking about, the infrastructure, do both stalls qualify for, explain like how we determine one stall for one credit and the infrastructure required?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So my understanding is that you would have to meet this definition of electric vehicle ready, which is the full circuit installation with, the different power availabilities, the panel, the wiring. It's basically including a plug. So from that, you could install a charger then that has multiple ports. So you could, plug in two cars at the same time. But in order to qualify for the rebate, you would have to meet this definition, which then you could install different types of chargers on.
So a charger with two ports would only qualify for one credit, in your opinion?
Well, so the charger is separately considered from the rebate under the existing program. Okay. And you can see the amounts that those qualify for in this measure on pages 5 and 6. So it shows, a level 2 station with only one port receives up to $2,000 in rebates and so forth. And I believe that the electric vehicle ready stalls, you would be able to install one charger based on that definition. It would meet, you could install one charger with multiple ports or different design types.
Okay. And I guess my second question is for some of these parking structures that we have that have, 300, 400 stalls, is the intent to give the developer up to $7,500 per stall if they did every stall and, have them qualify for like $1 million in rebates, or what's the intent of the?
That's a great question, and I think it's something that we would address with Hawaii Energy, the program administrator. Okay. There's definitely caps and limits that we would want to impose. I think we want to make sure that the funding is spread out and used at multiple housing developments, and I think that's something we would definitely address in the program design itself.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Any questions? I guess since you're up there.
Sure.
So let's. I think Rep. Monish did make a good point. So you're telling us that in your current program, because my take of the current program is it's kind of a given that if you're going to install a charger, you need the electrical install, right? So you're telling us you're sure that nothing is being used in your current rebate for the electrical install at the current moment.
In order to qualify for the rebate currently, you need to physically install a charger.
That's correct. But the given is to do a charger, you need the electrical, right?
Sure, yes. But it's my understanding that the intent of the current program is to pay for the charging system itself. And I think this measure helps to ensure that our buildings are ready to have those chargers installed at a lower cost. Because currently, right now, in order to qualify for the rebate and install a charger, you would have to go in and presumably retrofit the parking stalls, which is, a much greater cost than creating that infrastructure, that readiness at the time of the building being built.
Okay, great, thank you. So you said Hawaii Energy knows the finances?
Yes.
All right, Chester, I guess you're up. You wanna ask? Well, go ahead, Vice Chair. Hawaii Energy.
Yeah, so Chester, I'll ask you the same question on the funding for particular stalls and what the developer might be eligible for given a 500 stall building. How would you administer the program?
So I would echo what the PUC said, in that and we kind of do it. So we're only funded through this year through the end of June, I believe, right? And so then we whatever the funding for the program would be for the next year, we would have a chance again to work in the program design. And as the PUC said, we would work with them in order to make sure we're addressing the situation that you're describing, which is obviously we don't want to burn the entire budget for the program on one giant development that's going that way. So we would make sure that on the program design up front that we're addressing that kind of concern. So the chance, I think, would be to address that with the program design when we're getting ready to implement whatever the budget is for us.
Okay, but I think what Micah was talking about and Representative Martin was talking about is that eventually we're going to be fully renewable, 100%. So in theory, everyone's going to need chargers with their stalls. Is that where we're transitioning to? So having only a few in each parking structure and not having the whole parking structure EV ready is not really where we're transitioning to in the next 20 years. Is that correct, or am I wrong here?
I guess what I'd want to, I don't know, confer with, I guess, some of our team on the answer to that. So your question is the intent of the program to basically have every new parking stall be EV ready?
Yes, is that the intent?
I don't want to go on a limb and be wrong in that, but we'd be happy to, I'm happy to dive into that, and we can do that on our team and get back to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess for Hawaii Energy, do you believe that you need some type of cap on this at this point?
I think most likely, and I would echo the PUC again and say that we'll work with them on whatever makes the most sense. But in general, with a lot of our programs, not just for the EVCS program, we do find that yes, caps tend to be a useful tool for us because of the limited budget and because of, as the Vice Chair just pointed out, if there are loopholes, people tend to find them, and so caps we do find to be a pretty good way to address that in general. So
Okay.
probably.
Do you have any ideas on what a cap could be? 50% of stalls, 75% of stalls.
We'd have to look into that. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but we can get back to you with, I think, more specifics on that if we have some time to look at that.
Okay. No, thank you. No, I think we just want to make sure we're balancing. We're not giving away the store here. Rep. Onishi.
Chair, I just wanted to clarify, I misread the bill.
Okay.
I now see how it is a program change versus a separate program. But I do also have a concern that was just brought up in regards to this program, and I guess the issue of how you would redesign the program or create new rules. What about projects that have already been approved that are intending to take advantage of the current rules? How would you adjust that to apply if the project is either being built or is going to be built but has been approved with certain specifications and they're meeting certain requirements for affordable housing and have gotten funding from either the state or the federal government, and now you're changing the rules and might affect their costs and cost evaluation. How would you address that if someone came to you and said, hey, you know what, you changed the rules from last year and now it's going to cost us, X amount of dollars more for us to do what we had intended to do?
That's for Hawaii Energy? I apologize.
What was that for? Were you asking a question?
No. Well, no, that was for you. You mentioned that, right? That you guys, depending upon how much money is provided, you may have to look at this and change the rules on how to qualify.
Right. So I think what we do though is we just take it directly from how the bill is written and then working with the PUC. So whatever the the rules are to qualify are going to be dictated by the bill itself. So, and it is, as you mentioned, so year to year, meaning once we hit the end of the current program year for us, which is June 30th, then the next year is completely separate. I think the scenario you're describing, we would just have to treat case by case if it comes up, but hopefully the bill, if it does proceed and passes, is clear enough where we can just default back to whatever the language is in the bill, and that's what dictates for us the rules and requirements. So we don't have to bend anything or make exceptions. We're just defaulting back to what's in the legislation itself.
Well, I guess the concerns by Rep. Ayu and Rep. Hashimoto was you could blow your whole allotment on a project that comes up the beginning of the year that's huge. And you mentioned that you would not want to do that, so you would consider adjusting the rules so that that would not happen. But
right. So
these
in terms
projects have already been penned out like years in advance, and the approval process through permitting, etc., getting funding is all predicated on what the rules are, on how you can qualify, how you're going to fund the project. So, I mean, again, that's my concern.
Okay, thank you, Rep. Onishi. Vice Chair Ayu.
Yeah, last question to follow up on Representative Onishi's question. What about projects that are already pending where developers are already going to put in electrical or the chargers, right, to take advantage of the credit? Are these developers they're now going to be allowed to get more money for already pending projects that they have that they're already doing construction on?
I think I would echo back to what the PUC's answer on that. It would be, so the ones that are already pending and final are I guess, in the process
they're
of going
pending
forward.
but not yet constructed, or they're in the middle of construction, right? They wouldn't be eligible for the credits until construction's complete, but they're currently in construction.
Right. So, and those would be for the charging systems themselves, right? And so, I think to your question, those I don't think would apply to what this bill does, since that's aimed at the new construction and the infrastructure for it. The ones that would be in the pipeline already for us this year are just the infrastructure is already in there, as the PUC put it. The wiring, the dryer hookups already in there, because the rebates that we're handling now are for the charging systems themselves, and so the infrastructure is already there. This language, this expansion of the program is for specifically new construction. So I wouldn't foresee there being any risk
Right.
in that scenario
if I'm a developer and I'm currently in the process of building a building, I'm 1 year away from completion. This bill goes into effect in June 2023. They are immediately now eligible for the wiring, right, too, because they're going to be done next year sometime, as opposed to they originally would have only been eligible for the charging station, but now they're eligible for the wiring. That's what I'm saying.
I see your question. I think for us, I'd have to look at our program rules specifically, but I believe that's actually covered with the requirements and the setup that we've got currently, which is there are certain dates involved. So I think in order to get funding for your charging station that you're working on now in this current program, it would need to be done before that scenario plays out that you're describing. So I think I believe we're covered there, and we can confirm that and get back to you with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, members. Any other questions? All right, I think we've asked all the questions on that one. Let's move on. All right, we're going to move on to condo bills. We're going to move on to HB 1509 relating to common interest development. This establishes the Common Interest Development Oversight Task Force to examine the feasibility of bringing the various common interest developments in the state under the oversight of the DCCA. First up, we have Jane Sugimura.
Good morning, Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair Ayu, and members of the committee. My name is Jane Sugimura. I'm president of the Hawaii Council of Association of Apartment Owners. And HCCA supports passage of the bill to establish a task force to allow for discussion and consideration of establishing one law in Hawaii for common interest developments. Right now, you've got 3 separate laws. One for condos, which is Hawaii Revised Statutes 514B, and co-ops is 421I, and planned community associations is 421J. But, the condo law is very extensive, whereas the other 2 laws are very, small. I mean, they're very short. And so, the residents who live in co-ops and planned community association don't get the expanded rights that condo owners do. And this would be registration and oversight by the DCCA and Real Estate Commission, and the benefits of any programs that they have, and providing co-op lessees and homeowners rights to redress under RICO, because RICO is only for the condos. And this would allow, these other lessees and homeowners to participate in evaluative mediation and voluntary binding arbitration for dispute resolution subsidized by an education fund, and protection against retaliation by association boards, managing agents, or site managers. That law is in the condo law, but it's not in the other 2. And although combining these developments under under the DCCA would require additional staffing, the revenue generated by registering these entities that the DCCA would have to do would provide, the funds to offset the staffing expense. And other states have adopted such laws, like California is the one, and I suggest that Hawaii do the same. And I bring this to the legislature's attention because I've been getting concerns over the years from people who live in co-ops and planned community associations, saying, how come we can't get RICO, how come we can't get subsidized mediation? And I says, well, because it's under a different law. And so I'm just asking that you allow this task force to proceed. And I suggest that you add, as members to the task force, stakeholders, maybe a member or 2 members from CAI, which is Community Association Institute, and some members from my organization to be on the task force to assist in the discussions and deliberations. Thank you for allowing me to testify on this bill.
Thank you. There is no one else signed up to testify on Zoom or in person, but is there anyone wishing to testify that is on Zoom or here on HB 1509? We have a number of other written testimony in comments, opposition, and support. All right, members, any questions? Oh, right by you.
Jane, quick question. Is there anything that's preventing DCCA from just doing this without us, having a study and bringing a task force together?
Well, not so much, well, for one thing, I think in the past when this has come up, the DCCA, opposed it mainly because staffing and funding. But, if they were to take it over and register these entities, and there are, there are not a whole lot of co-ops in the state, and, they'd have to register the 421J entities, so it does mean they're going to have to staff. And so that's, so the DCCA in the past has opposed any attempts to do this. But, it just makes sense when you have these people who live in these common interest developments. It's basically the same type of thing. Why do you have 3 separate laws? And you have the condo bill 514B, which is very expansive, and the people who live in co-ops and the 421J entities, they don't get the benefits of what's in 514B. And I'm just saying, let's, get the task force together and see if we can, combine them all into one law. And I think, I don't think there's anything to prevent the DCCA from doing it, but I don't think without, a recommendation, a review and recommendation from a task force, it's not going to happen.
Thank you, Jen.
All right, members, any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on. HB 1161. This relates to board members, require board members of directors and officers of the condominium associations, cooperative housing corporations, and planned community associations to certify the receipt and reading of certain documents or complete a board leader course from an instructor certified by the Community Association Institute or similar national recognized organization. First up, we have Real Estate Commission.
Morning, Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair IU, Keating Kleinhans, Real Estate Commission, condominium specialist. We stand on a written testimony in opposition to request the Sunrise review of the proposed requirements. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. We have CAI LAC Hawaii on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and Committee. I'm Selkie Koo, representing CAI's LAC Committee. We have submitted the written testimony in support of the bill with amendments. We stand by our written testimony, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We have the Hawaii State Association of Parliamentarians on Zoom. We can't hear you, Steve.
Can you hear me all right, Chair?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Modern technology. Works until the warranty's up.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair Ayu, and committee members. Thanks for the opportunity to provide testimony on this bill. Unfortunately, the hearing only provided us with just a little over 24 hours, so it was kind of too short a time to provide a more extensive analysis. So I'm only going to cover a few of the points rather quickly. And this is an area where there's not a lot of consensus with CAI, with the State Association of Parliamentarians, possibly even HCAAO and a couple of other stakeholders. We do oppose this bill. It seems to be very well intentioned, and it does provide for certification of board members. However, there's several issues associated with it. And I've broken them out to planned community associations, cooperatives, and condominiums. This was come through the legislature before, and it was a problem. The training and the education is very difficult to manage. You're talking about perhaps 2,000 condo associations, 5 directors, maybe 10,000 board members requiring course completion within 90 days of their election or appointment. Someone's got to set up a course. And I like the idea from a professional standpoint of everybody gets to pay $100 and 3 of us do a Zoom meeting with 10,000 board members and make $1 million over the summer. However, I think it's more important to recognize that there is already training that's out there, and it's available. The Real Estate Commission has done Condorama. CAI has done several sessions of training, as well as they do have an ABC class, and HCAAO has stepped up to the plate and done some really good training. The familiarity with all of their documents can take some serious time. I can tell you that one association, Crosspoint, has 1,275 pages of governing documents, and for board members to certify that is just unreasonable. There's also about 173 pages of statute, and a nationally recognized instructor would really have to know Hawaii's laws if they were to do it. So I'm available for any questions if you wish. I do ask that you defer it or have the stakeholders work together to really make something that can enhance our training instead of throwing it all up in a mass mess here.
Thank you for your testimony. Kokua Council on Zoom.
Aloha, I'm Lila Moore, President of Kokua Council. I did not think I'd be presenting on Zoom for this bill. However, we are in support of the intent of the bill for the education of board members. That's really important for Hawaii. Mahalo.
Thank you. Let's see. Hawaii's Council for Association of Apartment Owners. Jane Sugimura.
Hello.
Yep, go ahead, Jane.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair Ayu, members of the committee. My name is Jane Sugimura, President of the Hawaii Council of Association of Apartment Owners, and usually with due respect to my respected colleague Steve Glenstein, You know, I have opposed these types of bills in the past, but I've kind of seen the light, and I believe that it's time that we do this, do the education of board members, and we do support the intent and purpose of House Bill 1161. We believe that the board members need to acknowledge receipt and review of the governing documents and to obtain certification that they've completed a training course. We believe this would improve the decision-making and governance skills and may minimize disputes by and among owners. But we have amendments to make. I would say we suggest that you require board members to comply with both requirements. Right now it says or. So change the or to an and require our board members to certify and receive and review the governing documents and they're within 90 days after the effective bill, not after their election, because of, they have staggered terms. And the training and education course should be done under the direction of the Real Estate Commission after first obtaining input from stakeholders as to the curriculum to be used. And since board members may likely result in since the board training may likely result in reduction of condo disputes, the Real Estate Commission should be allowed to use Condo Education Fund to implement the program. With respect to 421I and 421J entities, the new provision should be added to require registration with the DCCA and separate education funds set up for those entities to be used to implement the educational requirements for this bill. And rather than requiring board members to attend training classes, I suggest that the commission use the funds to develop a professional video that board members can view online and receive certification. We suggest that you include a provision that failure to comply with both requirements would disqualify a board member from serving on his or her board, and that you make the effective date of the bill January 1, 2024. Thank you for allowing me to testify on this.
Thank you. We have Paul Ireland Coftenow on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I am Paul Ireland Coftenow, and I respectfully oppose Senate Bill 1161. I am a condominium homeowner, and I'm also an attorney who works with community associations in Hawaii. And I have placed a very high priority on educating association board members, as I've spoken at numerous seminars, including DCCA's Condorama, other seminars hosted by the Community Associations Institute, known as CAI, and the Hawaii Council of Community Associations, known as HCCA. Education is a good thing, but I think this bill would impose certification requirements which are problematic. So if the
Paul, I think we lost you.
Okay.
Okay,
So
well,
what I'm
here-
saying is
go
that
ahead.
in addition to what I stated in my written testimony, if the legislature wants an education program, it should increase the education programs provided by DCCA. At this time, however, I'm just very concerned that there are not enough educational programs to help all the board members in the state satisfy the requirements in this bill. And CAI is the only nationally recognized organization that provides education to board members presently. So it would really be left to CAI and any other nationally recognized organization to step in and train board members. So I think the best thing would be, if the legislature wants more educational opportunities, task DCCA with expanding its educational program. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all that has signed up for testimony. There's a number of individuals who signed and submitted written testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1161? All right. Seeing.
This is Greg Mistaken. I have my hand up in the chat.
Okay, go ahead. HB 1161.
Aloha, committee members. I actually did sign up for the Zoom hearing, so I'm participating in that. And I'm just going to read my statement. I do support HB 1161. HB 1161 will provide much needed Board of Directors training and certification and will eliminate the excuses often made by directors when they improperly conduct AOAO business that they are just volunteers. A seat on any Board of Directors must be filled by qualified candidates, and the volunteer excuse was and is unacceptable. The results can clearly be seen in the many mismanaged associations throughout Hawaii and the need to waste association funds on expensive parliamentarians at board meetings and annual meetings. Those on the board need to be required to go through mandatory training and certification so they know what is expected of them and their fiduciary duty. There have been and continue to be many unqualified directors on the board at my association, which is negatively impacting my AOAO. This is repeated all across associations throughout Hawaii, and I've heard this from many concerned condominium owners. Abuse of power and malfeasance are the result, and the solution begins with HB 1161, followed by an ombudsman's office to oversee condominiums and HOAs. I ask the committee and all state legislators to please support HB 1161. Mahalo.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? HB 1161. Seeing none, members, any questions? All right, seeing no questions, we're going to move to HB 226 relating to cooperative housing corporations. This specifies that members of the Board of Directors of Cooperative Housing Corporation shall owe the corporation a fiduciary duty and exercise the degree of care and loyalty required of an officer or director of the corporation. First up, we have, let's see, Hawaii State Association of Parliamentarians.
Hello, Chair, members. Again, I stand on my written testimony in opposition with just one note on it. We do have a rather extensive standard for directors when it comes to cooperatives in HRS 414-221, and I do have concerns that if you do adopt this and becomes law, it will actually reduce the responsibility of board members in a way that may not have been anticipated, and I've detailed it in my written testimony. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Jane Sugimura, Hawaii Council for Association of Apartment Owners.
Good morning, again, Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair Ayu, members of the committee. HCCA stands in opposition to the bill. We join in the testimony of my colleague, Steve Glanstein of the Hawaii State Association of Parliamentarians, and we ask to defer action on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all that's signed up. Then we have a number of those who submitted written testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify? HB 226. Members, any questions? Rep by you. Go ahead.
Jane, quick question. This was proposed by one of my other constituents. That's why I introduced this bill. But do you think if we move, what is it? 1161. No, sorry. 1509, which we were just talking about, that would cover what I'm trying to accomplish here?
Yes, I think if because you would have one standard, you know, and right now, as Steve Glanstein mentioned and I did, we already have HRS 414 that kind of covers this because they're corporations, and so corporations, the corporations statute does provide for a standard already. So this is really unnecessary.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any members, any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on. Last bill, HB 176 relating to condominium associations. This looks like an omnibus bill that does a lot in the condominium law. One of them expands the Real Estate Commission's enforcement and authority. There's some things with voting, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So let's, first up, Real Estate Commission.
Morning again, Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair Ayu, and committee members, Keating Kleinhans Real Estate Commission. We sent out written testimony, written comments. Again, request the sunrise review, noting that the amendments to 514B 124.5 that eliminates the quorum requirements for elections and permits elections with at least 20% of the unit owners, runs counter to the condominium principle of majority rule. We also defer to the Regulated Industries Complaints Office for the provisions on enforcement. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next up, we have Regulated Industry Complaints Office. Esther Brown.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Esther Brown, and I'm the Complaints Enforcement Officer for RICO, so it's nice to meet all of you. I'm basically going to stand on my written testimony offering comments, but I would like to emphasize one thing in it. The first 5 sections of the bill does purport to expand the enforcement authority of the Real Estate Commission, and RICO is the enforcement arm for all of the boards and commissions within DCCA. But the thing that triggers RICO's jurisdiction is if the specialty work that is being performed requires a license. That is the trigger for RICO. And so what this law is trying to do is put in the provisions related to voting and annual elections within the enforcement provisions of 514B, and that's all fine and dandy. But RICO wouldn't be able to do anything with those if complaints were filed in our office, because you don't need a real estate license to vote in an election. You don't need a real estate license to attend the annual meeting. That's purely private conduct by people living within the neighborhood. So I just wanted to make it clear that we do have condominium complaints that come in, but the thing that drives our enforcement ability is this specialty work that requires a license? And then is the person licensed to do it? Or are they engaging in unlicensed activity? So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Hawaii State Association of Parliamentarians, Steve Glanstein.
Hello, Chair members, back again. This is 3 for 3 here. I certainly don't like to oppose 3 bills in the same morning. However, we do have written testimony in opposition to House Bill 176. Basically, it's got numerous problems with it. It basically rewrites the entire election system. It does take away owners' rights to use proxies for meetings, whether it's filling vacancies or for election. I've got about 108 meetings that myself and my staff are dealing with in the next month and a half. We are highly experienced with having to conduct meetings and making sure that elections are done correctly, making sure the numbers balance, and the management companies, we actually look at their totals and make sure we don't have elections with more numbers than people who were there. And so this statute does have numerous problems with it. And over the years, I was on the task force that developed HRS 514B, and it's no longer years, it's decades. Over the decades, we found a balanced way for posting notice on the property, having owners the freedom to get their statements sent out to other owners when they're either running for the board or they're trying to just collect proxies to remove somebody or amend the documents. And so we found a way to balance it, and this has been working quite well for about the last 17 years since 514B came out. So I just don't see the need for it. We don't see the need for it. It's clearly coming from a small minority of owners who are unable to get elected to their board. I do know some of the individuals as well as the associations and the problems with it because they hire us for the rest of our life in advance on the third Wednesday of March or the fourth Tuesday. So, as parliamentarians, we kind of know when there's troubled associations, but the great majority of them is preventative maintenance rather than trying to solve a problem at the meeting. So I don't believe it's in the best interest of the condominium associations or their owners. There's really no true compelling reason for it. It's very complicated, and we do have pending legislation to kind of make it a little bit simpler for annual meetings. I'll certainly look to comment on those at another time if there's a hearing on the specific electronic voting issues and how we can expedite the results. And I'm available for any questions or comments or anything technical if you wish. Thank you.
Moving on, Kokua Council, Greg Messakin.
Mahalo for the opportunity again to testify. My name is Greg Mistakian, and I'm the second vice president of the Kokua Council. I want to just first make a comment to one of the people testifying just a moment ago. Annual elections are managed by our management companies. They're overseen and managed by our management companies. The management company is a licensed entity, while all of the employees within that company aren't typically licensed, or most of them aren't licensed. The broker of the community management company or community, association management company is a licensed broker. So a RICO complaint can actually be made, or should be able to be made against the broker and that entity if there's any problems with mismanaged elections, improper activities with elections. Now I'm just going to read what I have as a quick statement. I do strongly support HB 176. HB 176 will provide fair and honest association elections and will take away the abuse of proxies, which is prevalent throughout Hawaii in many associations. I know this all too well, as there is a serious abuse of proxy solicitation and proxy hoarding by directors on the board at my AOAO. This is done to retain power and keep others off the board. Certain directors are also abusing the use of owner emails to solicit proxies, as they have access to the full list of owner email addresses. This is yet another unfair advantage that by itself should make it 100% clear that the solicitation of proxies and their use needs to be replaced by election ballots and fair elections. Other elements of this carefully thought out bill are intended to further ensure fair elections and provide better oversight and enforcement. I ask the committee and all state legislators to please support HB 176. Mahalo.
Thank you. Kukul Council, Lila Moore.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Lila Moore, President of Kukul Council, here in support of House Bill 176, which has two major purposes. The first is to require certification by board directors they have read their governing documents and other documents pertinent to the governance of their association, and are prepared for the managerial, financial, legal responsibilities necessary to properly govern their associations. Many condo owners complain about their boards, and one thing stands out. Many directors have not even heard of HRS 514B, and many have never read their association governing documents, which brings to question, then how do they govern? Arbitrarily, it seems. The second purpose of House Bill 176 is to improve and protect the integrity of the association election process. In 2016, it was a discovery of an improper alteration of a standardized proxy that brought to my attention the significance of proxy assignments and exploitation that could occur. Despite Act 73, which followed that discovery, a similar alteration of a standardized proxy can still occur, depriving an owner of his vote. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 176 to end these improper processes by enabling secured mail-in ballots, which would obviate the need for proxy assignments and to make association election rules enforceable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Paul Ireland Koftenau.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Paul Ireland Koftenau. I'm a homeowner in a condominium, and I'm also an attorney who represents many condominium and community associations in Hawaii. As a homeowner, I like the option of being able to use a proxy form because I'm not always able to attend my board meetings. I know this is true for several legislators as well who are homeowners and community associations. So having proxies is a good option. Instead, what this bill seeks to do is replace proxies entirely with ballots that must be mailed in before the meeting. This ballot requirement is problematic because it wouldn't give the owners enough time to mail in the ballots. Ballots couldn't be changed at the meeting, and at the meeting itself, there wouldn't be the option for owners to appoint candidates at meetings because everything would be decided before the meeting. The meeting with respect to elections would just essentially be there for people to count the ballots. And without a proxy, it makes it very difficult for associations to obtain a quorum. So the ability to have a proxy or proxy voting is very good for associations because it allows associations to do business, which is very essential for associations and their boards to be able to manage and maintain their buildings. My testimony is very long. I am able to comment on it further if the committee wishes, but I stand on my written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale Heed, individual.
Hey, it's good morning, Chairman Hashimoto and Vice Chair Ayu. I was in a condo complex for 35 years. I spent over a decade on the board. I was elected multiple times, and we had many profit management companies. Due to sketchy elections, I went down and audited the proxies on a post-election basis. I discovered why they were sketchy. The management company, which should not be involved in elections since it handles the money, that's a conflict of interest. Undecided owners may mark their proxy for the board. Well, I counted 75 proxies for the board as a whole, 26 to be divided equally between those board members present. What happened was that the combined number of 101 proxies were worth 404 votes due to cumulative voting. There was no properly made motion recorded on the election certificate or official minutes with a manager in cahoots with the board president funneled those proxies to a couple of his pals on the board to keep them on. This wrongfully blocked people who had more support from owners who were able to vote their choice. This is unfair. I'd like to point out that, the U.S. Constitution, the 14th Amendment, has an equal protection clause. This came about after the Civil War. The language was, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. We all think we have the right to vote. Not if you live in a condominium complex or an HOA, all right? In 2005, these lobbyists for these
Thank you, Dale. Can you wrap it up?
management companies screwed that up with making it conditional. All right, you have to be at the meeting in person. That's baloney. That shuts out disabled people, mobility challenged people, and investors who own multiple units that can't be there.
Thank you, Dale. Can you wrap it up, Dale?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Jane Sugimura, Hawaii Council for Association of Apartment Owners.
Good morning again. Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair Ayu, members of the committee. HCCA opposes this bill, and we join in the testimony of Steve Glanstein of the Hawaii State Association of Parliamentarians and ask that you defer action on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to testify? HB 176. We have a number of individuals and organizations that submitted written testimony that's in the record. But anyone else wishing to testify? HB 176. Right, members, questions? Rep by you, go ahead.
Esther Brown, just one question for you. Or maybe a few multiple questions on the same topic. You were talking about licensing. That's the trigger for your department.
For RICO, yes.
Yeah, for RICO. So are property managers licensed?
Some are and some aren't. Some condominium associations are self-managed. So not all of them are.
Okay, so like Hawaiiana and
Yeah.
Hawaiian, they're licensed or they're not licensed?
They are licensed.
Okay, so if a homeowner files a complaint in your office against them for the management, you guys could.
We do,
You guys
actually.
could investigate
Yes,
those.
we actually do. We weigh their conduct and the allegations. So we look at 467, HRS 467, because they are a real estate licensee. And then if there are condominium-related issues, we will look at 514B, related to their conduct as a licensee.
Okay, so I'm kind of confused about what your testimony was, that the license isn't triggered. What instances would you not have the authority to investigate?
Our authority kicks in the case of the Real Estate Commission, generally if it's a commercial real estate transaction and there's a consumer on the other side. So people that are buying homes, people that are leasing property, etc., they are required under certain circumstances, because there are exemptions under the law, but they are required to have a real estate license to do that. And they can complain to our office, and we will investigate to make sure that they're complying with the licensing laws.
So in instances where the board, like AO does not have a property management company, and the board is just individuals, that's when you would not be able to step in.
What we do is we get a lot of condominium complaints, so we do actually have a committee within RICO to look at these, because we know there are just a lot of issues related to that. So we do screen them. We try our best to educate people when we don't have jurisdiction. So we provide brochures. We try to point them to the Real Estate Commission for possibly ADR, to watch the mini Condorama videos that's available and so forth, so they can educate themselves and empower themselves, so we can intake complaints regardless of whether or not we have jurisdiction. And then part of what we do is determine whether or not we do.
I guess I'm just focused on the when you don't have jurisdiction. What are those instances, so that we can try to, make sure that that's not an issue for individuals.
We would have to look at 514B and stare at it and basically look at it, because the kicker is really the licensure behavior.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to recess for decision making. Welcome back, members. We're going into decision making on our 9:30 a.m. agenda. Thanks for sticking with us. For those who are still watching, first up, 1363 relating to taxation. This we're calling it the Maui special because they're the last county that doesn't have the surcharge. So we're going to pass this out as an HD2, and we're going to actually. We did discuss with the DOTAX director, even though he wasn't here. I was a little disappointed he wasn't here, but actually there is a provision that he said if you can do it by a certain date, they can do it a year earlier. So we're going to add in that if a county approves the surcharge by August 1st, 2023, collections can start on January 1st, 2024. But if between August 2nd, 2023 to December 31st, 2023, the surcharge is approved, then collections must start on January 1st, 2025. So they only have a month and once we enact it to do it, but then if to do it within that year, the next year, but if not, if they wait, then they'll have to do it, wait until 2025. Also, we have a recommendation by HMSO to replace G3 to state housing infrastructure provided that a county uses surcharge revenues for housing infrastructure shall not pass on related infrastructure costs to the developer of a housing project, provided further that this paragraph shall apply only if a county amended its surcharge ordinance pursuant to subsection D or adopts a county surcharge on state tax ordinance after December 31st, 2022. So there was some redundancy, so we're cleaning that up. We'll allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions, and this is already defective. So in terms of the date. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Rep. Onishi.
Yeah, Chair, since this taxation has been imposed, I've been opposed to counties being given other types of use for this taxation that doesn't apply to the city and county of Honolulu. The original intent of the taxation was to assist the city and county or any counties with transportation infrastructure needs. We are diverting funds from Hawaii County, which I represent, for much needed infrastructure and mass transit projects. They just a year ago came up with a mass transit plan to utilize these funds for that. Now, giving the Hawaii County an option to now divert funds from mass transit or infrastructure to now housing infrastructure, I think creates a problem where at the county level, they will, consider other priorities that people have worked hard to try to prioritize, which is mass transit on our island. We have the largest island, therefore the highest expense to try to get people to places of work and shopping, etc., medical services. So I think for Hawaii County, this is not a good idea, and to allow this to happen will create more problems. There's always the ability for a county to divert funds that are being used for mass transit, and I know on Maui they provide funding for mass transit. They did not implement this, and I don't have a problem with them being able to implement this surcharge, but I still believe it should be used for transportation purposes so that Maui can divert funds they're using for transportation to then address housing infrastructure. So with that being said, as well as the fact that there was nobody here to testify on who's going to manage this use and to verify that it's being used specifically for those needs. So with that, I'm sorry, but I have to vote no on this.
Okay. Members, any other questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members, voting on HB 1363 HD1, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Kila.
Aye.
Representative Kitagawa.
Aye.
Representative Martin.
Aye.
Representative Onishi.
No.
Representative Todd.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 360 relating to housing. This was a short form bill that came back. Just some background, I think this was a request from one of the members who had some concerns about 2-1H projects in their districts, about moving very quickly through the councils. And so I think it's a balance between trying to move things through quickly and having enough, time to testify and have public outreach. So I think what we'll do for now is we'll keep this moving along. We're going to blank out the date or the time frame. Right now it says 90 days, but we're going to just blank that out and we'll keep it moving along for discussion purposes to allow this to get hashed out. Members, and we're going to allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions. And this is already defective in the implementation date. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 360 HD1, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Noting the presence of all members, are there any members choosing to vote no? With reservations, Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. HB 224 relating to human services. We're going to pass this out as is, but we're going to note in the committee report that the $500,000 is the amount that is requested. It's already blanked out in the program amount for the program, and then the date is also defective. So we'll just, as I said, as is. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none. Rep. Onishi, go ahead.
I just have a concern that I believe the Hawaii Public Housing Authority should be working more closely with the UH system, the community colleges and the four-year colleges, if they're looking at trying to help their tenants upgrade skills or other types of abilities. I think that I would like to see that this funding be put to the use of the coordination between the UH system and the Hawaii Housing Authority. That way it provides for opportunities statewide. To me, this seems like a very Oahu-centric bill because of the number of tenants within the state that live on Oahu versus the neighbor islands. And that way, the community colleges, which has free tuition for anybody, can establish programs that may not only help tenants, but also local residents. So.
Okay, thank you.
That being said, I'm voting with reservation.
Okay, thank you, Rep. Onishi. Noted, Ben in the back. All right. All right, so moving out as is. Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 224 HD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is, knowing that all members are all present and with reservations from Representative Onishi. Are there any other members choosing to vote no or with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is HB 148 relating to taxation. We're actually going to defer this measure and we're going to see how HB 1211 that passed out of Water Land and Senate Bill 362, which passed out of the Housing Committee affairs this session, that also relates to conveyance tax. I think just from the testimony, it's problematic on how we would determine if a property has been vacant for 180 days or more, and who would implement that. I think the better way actually to address this is a tax on real property at the county level, because then it's a recurring tax rather than a one-time conveyance tax. And possibly I'm going to recommend to the introducer that we have her do a resolution to the counties in terms of property taxes. So that measure is deferred, 148. Moving on to HB 1252 relating to energy. Thank you for the robust discussion on this measure and also for the input from all of the testifiers. We're going to delete Section 2 due to the concerns with adding mandates to the qualified allocation plan. I think it was well-intentioned, but I think it was good advice from HHFDC that we need to look at some national standards to add to the qualified allocation plan before we make it a state mandate. So we'll delete that section. We're also going to add a 50% cap on eligible parking stalls to incorporate the concerns of the number of rebates that might come in and make sure that we stay within the budget that we have. And we'll also put into the committee report that we are concerned about the start date of those construction projects that are already in progress, and that needs to be figured out and worked out possibly through administrative rules. And we're going to allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions, and the date is already defective. Members, any questions, comments, concerns?
I have a comment.
Rep. Kila.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in full support of this measure, and there was a testimony that talked about giving EV chargers to folks in low-income housing and how they can't necessarily afford electric cars. And let it be known that when we do things like this, it's actually giving folks the chance to have an electric car. Not all electric cars are $60,000, $80,000. I'm excited to see what comes in the pipeline, and I think we need to work to address that. Folks in low-income housing can obtain these kind of things. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Keela. Members, any other questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members, we're voting on HB 1252 HD1. Chair elects to pass with amendments. Noting the presence of all members, are there any members choosing to vote no or with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your measures adopted.
Reservations.
Noting the reservations of Representative Onishi, Chair, your measures adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 1509 relating to common interest developments. So we're going to add in that the working group shall, or I guess the task force or whatever it's called, shall also investigate whether additional duties and fiduciary responsibilities should be placed on members of the board of directors of cooperative housing corporations. So that will incorporate a future measure into this bill. We're also going to allow that additional members of the task force may be added at the discretion of the 3 members stated in the bill. We're going to defect the effective date, and we're going to allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? All right, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 1509, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Noting the presence of all members, are there any members choosing to vote no or with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your measures adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 1161 relating to board members. We're going to actually defer this measure. Pursuant to the testimony by the Real Estate Commission, they do not enforce HRS 421I and 421J, so that's cooperative housing corporations and the planned community associations. So we're going to need to wait for their work that was done in the previous bill, HB 1509, to see what they can come up with. And then we should have a solution for the condominiums coming up in HB 176. So again, we're deferring 1161. All right, HB 226 relating to cooperative housing corporations. We're going to also defer this measure, and we're going to use HB 1509 as we added in language specifically to investigate whether additional duties should be added to the board of directors. So we're deferring HB 226. Final measure, HB 176 relating to condo associations. So because there does not seem to be an agreement on what we should do with this bill, I think we're going to turn this into a task force to see if we can come closer to some type of resolution on this matter. I actually would have preferred to incorporate all of this into 1509, but we're unable to do so because there's a defective title. So in order for us to pass this out, we're going to put the condo stuff in this bill and all the other stuff in the other bill that we just passed out. So I passed out a proposed HD1 to all of you, and I'll go over it real quick. So I think essentially what we're trying to do is we're going to take some of the language from 1509, so the members will be the same. There's going to be a representative from DCCA, there's going to be a member from the House and the Senate. We'll also allow them to add additional members at their discretion that they feel is necessary. And then I'll quickly read off what they're supposed to investigate. So they're supposed to investigate the feasibility of expanding the Real Estate Commission's enforcement authority to include violations of requirements for association meetings and board of director elections. Investigate the feasibility of creating a condominium ombudsman's office. So this was another bill that they wanted, and we're going to throw this into this so that they can take a look at that, because we never heard that bill, but I hear their concerns about all the issues about trying to figure out how to figure out disputes. So we're going to add the Ombudsman's Office under the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and proposes the duties of the office along with identifying feasible means of funding such office. It's a lot of words there. Determine whether additional regulations are necessary for members of the board of directors to comply with their duties and obligations under sections 514B. That's the condo law section. We're going to review the need for voting reform under Section 514B in condominium elections, including but not limited to proxy voting, board of director elections, notices of election, notice of intent to run for election, ballots and runoff elections, and the forgery of ballot envelopes, including penalties if necessary. And we're going to allow them to develop legislation that's necessary to effectuate the purposes of Section 1. So that's all included in your Proposed HD1, I'm going to allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions because I wrote this myself, so I don't even know if this is the way it's supposed to read. So we're going to allow them to fix it up and make it into a real bill. We're going to defect the date to June 30th, 3000, and we'll pass this out. Members, any questions, concerns, comments? I think that incorporates most of what everyone was saying, and we'll just keep it along to see if we can come to some resolution. Hearing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 176, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Noting the presence of all members, are there any members choosing to vote no or with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, measures adopted.
Thank you. With no further business, this meeting is adjourned. And thank you, members, for all of your work. This is our last meeting until we get all the Senate bills. So appreciate all your due diligence.